All right. And today we are going to talk about related service logs, how they must be maintained, how they need to be provided, and all things related service logs. So, Phil, tell us, what is a related service log and what do we need to know about it?
Well, let me tell you how this all came about. Parents wanted to be able to see whether or not their child was receiving the related services under their IEP that they were supposed to be receiving in the amount of time that they were supposed to be receiving it. So when I was a hearing officer, I was told in a lot of cases that when student records were requested by a parent or the parent's representative, that these logs were not being released to the lawyer, to the parent, or whoever the designated representative was. We're not receiving service log. But as a hearing officer, when you get records in from the district, we would get these logs. So we wondered, like, okay, where did these logs come? And realized that in most districts, they maintain these logs so that the related service provider, whether it be a social worker, counselor, speech language pathologist, school psychologist, whoever, was actually performing the service, because the district has a right to know that they're actually doing their jobs too and providing the number of minutes that the IEP requires for each service. So we put into the statute in 2020 provision that basically clarified, even though we think they had been in school records all along, that related service logs are student records. That when you request student records, you should get the related service logs, which record that the services have been delivered, when they've been delivered, and the number of minutes of each session. There are some details of the services that are delivered that are confidential in some cases, and we don't want those recorded. That would particularly be true with social work, counseling, psychology, and in the case of nursing, their medical records. So there's some things you don't have to put in there, but we did want to know the number of minutes you were providing in each session, when the sessions were held. That's really important information for parents to know that they're actually being provided. So they're not just on the IEP, but they're actually being implemented. So we put this in law. The law is limited to certain related services under special ed law. They are speech and language services, school social work services, counseling, school psychology, and school nursing. So those are the logs that are part of the records. This is a valuable tool for parents in terms of when you get your student record, for you to determine whether these services have been provided as is called for on the IEP. There will be times, and I just also want to note, there probably will be times when the social worker, the speech and language pathologist, they may be out sick, or they might have some other emergency that comes up with another student where they can't provide the service on the day they're supposed to. But they should let you know that they're going to make it up on a given day or whatever the case may be, so that they meet the IEP requirements. That's really the main thing. Are they complying with the IEP? Whether these are enough minutes or they're appropriate for your child, that's an IEP team decision. But once the minutes are put into the IEP and the particular services that are required are put in, they're required to deliver those services. They don't guarantee an outcome of any kind, but they are to deliver the services and try to meet the goals that have been established for your child. So very important addition to the law. And this is, again, an Illinois law, not a federal law, but a very important piece of information that parents should have.
And I will tell you, Phil, this is something that you have drilled into our heads. It is something that has helped us successfully represent children with special needs and their parents. So thank you for covering this. To your point, Phil, this is an Illinois law, but you covered topics here that are important for parents everywhere. And again, I know I say this throughout the entire series, but let this be a warning to you when you go, wait a minute, what are service logs? What's the rules in our area? If you're not sure and you can't find the rules in your local area, you probably have a state board that you can go to and call. Typically, they provide guidance, or they can steer you in the right direction of an agency that can do that, or a firm. And we highly encourage that you find an advocate or an attorney or specialist that specifically focuses in special education. It's incredibly complex, and every state is different.
And if you're talking about other jurisdictions, Sabrina, they may call it something different, but they're very likely to have, in most states, some mechanism for recording the related service minutes and sessions that are provided. They may not call them service logs, they may call them something different, and each state law may be differently, but you have a right to know that the services are being provided in accordance with the IEP. That is your right to know. So however they record it, however it's documented or memorialized, you should have a right to know that information.
And you bring up another great point. We don't have time in this video to go through it, but we have another video about obtaining your student records. There is a federal right called FOIA, or Freedom of Information Act, which you can use in some situations. Also, different states have their own student records acts. Then there's, of course, federal protections for children who have an IEP or an individualized education plan to access their record. And districts must maintain those records for a very long time.
Every state has to follow the federal FERPA law. The FERPA law has to be followed. Now, most states also have their own state law. And at a minimum, they have to comply with the federal, but they can also put other things in the state law that don't conflict with the federal. The other thing I want to mention is records issues come up a lot in special ed matters. So what should be in the records? When can they be destroyed? Those issues come up, and sometimes things that don't appear in the record that should be in the record, particularly if you're preparing for an IEP meeting, mediation, or due process, trying to get all the records that you need that are available is difficult. So you have to be aware of your rights in terms of student records. That's an important right.
I'm glad you brought up FERPA. That is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. That's a federal law that regulates access and disclosure of student educational records. So that will grant parents access to the child's records. They allow amendments, control disclosures, things like that. So again, we can't fully go into it, but that is the federal law under the U.S. Department of Education. I know we have a lot more questions to cover, so stay tuned. We will be including more experts to come. If you have questions, as always, you are welcome to reach out to us at info@breakingautism.com. We highly encourage you to reach out. Let this be a guiding light. If you heard words here today that didn't make sense to you, or maybe triggered something, maybe there's something in your gut sparked, let that be a message and listen to it to research and learn more. We encourage you to also send us your questions. We want to hear from you because we are certainly not going to stop helping parents, guardians, and professionals. So with that, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you soon.